Picture this. December 12th, 1910. Manhattan's Fifth Avenue glitters with holiday shoppers. A beautiful young woman steps out of Brentano's bookstore, a wrapped book tucked under her arm. She waves goodbye to a friend, smiles, and walks into the crowd. She is never seen again. Welcome back to Golden Age Mysteries, where we uncover the dark secrets hidden beneath America's glittering facade. I'm your host, and today we're diving into one of the most baffling disappearances in American history. In the winter of 1910, when America's wealthy lived like royalty and New York society pages read like fairy tales, Dorothy Arnold had everything a young woman could want. Born into the prestigious Arnold family, educated at the finest schools, beautiful, intelligent, and worth millions in today's money. But on a crisp December morning, this American princess would step into a mystery that has haunted investigators for over a century. What happened to Dorothy Arnold? Was it suicide, murder, or something even more sinister? The answer lies hidden in the marble mansions of the Gilded Age, where secrets were as carefully guarded as family fortunes.
To understand Dorothy's disappearance, we must first understand her world. The Arnold family wasn't just wealthy, they were American royalty. Francis R. Arnold had built his empire on something most people never think about: the delicate scents that wealthy women wore to society balls. His company, F.R. Arnold & Co., imported the world's finest perfumes, and those invisible tendrils of luxury had made him fantastically rich. The family mansion at 108 East 79th Street stood as a monument to their success. Persian carpets that had crossed oceans, crystal chandeliers that caught and multiplied gaslight until the very air seemed to sparkle with wealth. But for Dorothy, these marble halls weren't a palace, they were a prison. Born July 1st, 1885, Dorothy was the second of 4 children. Beautiful, with luminous eyes and an ethereal grace that turned heads wherever she went. But beauty, in the Arnold world, came with a price. At the Velton School for Girls, Dorothy learned to move through society like a queen. At Bryn Mawr, she discovered something more dangerous than rebellion: ambition. She wanted to write. She wanted to create. She wanted a life beyond the suffocating parlors of Fifth Avenue. But when her stories returned with rejection letters, her family's amusement cut deeper than any editor's criticism. The message was clear: Arnold women didn't work. They married well and looked beautiful doing it. By autumn 1910, Dorothy had begun making mysterious trips downtown. Her father's refusal to let her move to Greenwich Village, that bohemian refuge of artists and intellectuals, only strengthened her resolve. Something was building toward a breaking point. Dorothy had been corresponding with someone in Boston, a man named George Griscom Jr., whose very name made Francis Arnold's jaw tighten with disapproval. The stage was set for a confrontation that would end not in resolution, but in one of America's most enduring mysteries.
December 12th, 1910, dawned cold and clear in Manhattan. The kind of crystalline winter day when footsteps echo sharply off brownstone facades and even the air seems to hold its breath. At 11 a.m., Dorothy Arnold emerged from the family mansion wearing a tailored blue suit that whispered of wealth with every movement. Her black velvet hat, adorned with silk roses, cast delicate shadows across her face. In her leather purse, $25 in crisp bills, a fortune to most, but mere pocket money to an Arnold. But there was something else in that purse: a letter. Its contents known only to Dorothy, but the paper was worn at its edges from repeated reading. Another letter from Boston. Another letter from George Griscom, Jr. Dorothy's first stop was Brentano's bookstore on Fifth Avenue. Here, among the leather-bound volumes and fresh ink, she selected Engaged Girl Sketches, a choice that investigators would later dissect for hidden meaning. The book's pages held stories of love and marriage, subjects that had become increasingly complicated in Dorothy's own life since her secret meetings with Griscom in Boston. At 2 p.m., she made her way to Park and Tilford, the luxury food emporium. Here she purchased a box of chocolates, the kind she had always favored, wrapped in paper that crinkled with elegant restraint. The shopgirl who served her would later remember Dorothy perfectly. Elegant, composed, but with something in her eyes. Was it sadness? Determination? Fear? At 2:30 p.m., Dorothy ran into Gladys King, a family friend outside Brentano's. They chatted briefly about the cold weather and holiday plans. Gladys would later say Dorothy seemed perfectly normal, perhaps even cheerful. "I'm going to walk through the park," Dorothy told her friend, gesturing toward Central Park's winter landscape. "The air will do me good." They said goodbye. Gladys King was the last person to see Dorothy Arnold alive. Dorothy walked toward Central Park, where bare trees reached toward a steel-gray sky like grasping fingers. The park's winding paths had witnessed countless secrets, whispered promises, clandestine meetings. But whatever secrets they might have held about Dorothy's fate remained locked in winter's frozen embrace. Back at the Arnold mansion, dinner preparations began with usual precision. Silver being laid, wine being decanted, servants moving with practiced efficiency through rooms growing steadily darker. But Dorothy's chair would remain empty. Her absence, at first a mere ripple in the carefully orchestrated rhythm of upper-class life, would soon become a wave threatening to overwhelm the carefully constructed facade of Arnold family propriety. As evening shadows lengthened across Fifth Avenue's fashionable flagstones, Dorothy Arnold had already stepped into a mystery that would haunt New York society for generations to come. Here's where the Dorothy Arnold case becomes truly sinister. It wasn't just that she disappeared, it's what her family did next. For 6 weeks, 6 entire weeks, the Arnolds said nothing. No police reports, no missing person notices, no desperate searches through Central Park's frozen paths. Behind the heavy curtains and massive oak doors of their Fifth Avenue mansion, the family's private agony played out in whispered conversations and furtive meetings with their lawyer, John S. Keith. Francis Arnold, who had built an empire on imported perfumes and social connections, now found himself facing an enemy that neither wealth nor influence could defeat. Each morning, he descended the mansion's marble staircase with grayer features, the weight of his decision to protect the family name bearing down upon him. But protected from what? What were they so afraid of? The answer lay in the social rules of the Gilded Age. Scandal was the great destroyer of fortunes. A whisper of impropriety could ruin a family's standing forever. Better to hope Dorothy would return on her own than to invite the press's hungry speculation. Mary Martha Arnold, Dorothy's mother, maintained her social calendar with mechanical precision. Each tea party and charity meeting became a masterclass in composed desperation. Behind her perfect smile lay the growing certainty that every passing hour without police involvement pushed her daughter further beyond reach. But still, the specter of scandal kept her lips sealed and her gloved hands folded properly in her lap. Privately, the family did hire investigators. The Pinkerton Detective Agency, those shadows among shadows, began following leads that dissolved into nothing. But their work was conducted in absolute secrecy.
Meanwhile, Dorothy's room remained untouched. Her evening clothes hung in their wardrobes, her jewelry lay undisturbed in its cases. And there, on her writing desk, lay a half-finished manuscript, its pages forever waiting for an ending that would never come. What story had she been telling? Was there a clue in those unfinished pages? The family would never say. By January 1911, the situation had become impossible to maintain. Someone, perhaps a servant, perhaps a friend, had begun to talk. Whispers were circulating through New York society. The Arnolds were about to lose control of their carefully guarded secret. On January 25, 1911, 6 weeks after Dorothy vanished, the family finally broke their silence. What they revealed to the world would transform their private nightmare into America's most sensational missing person case. But by then, it might already have been too late.
When the Arnolds finally went public on January 25, 1911, the press descended like vultures on fresh prey. Francis Arnold stood before the flashbulbs, his dignity crumbling like ancient marble, as he offered $1,000 for information about his daughter's whereabouts. It seemed paltry against the $100,000 he would eventually spend chasing shadows across the nation. Dorothy's face stared out from newspaper pages coast to coast. Beautiful, mysterious, tragically missing. America became obsessed. The investigation that followed revealed disturbing details about Dorothy's final weeks. The letters from George Griscom Jr. weren't just friendly correspondence. They were love letters. Dorothy had been conducting a secret romance with a man her father despised. Griscom himself became the primary suspect. This young Boston socialite had been in Italy when Dorothy disappeared, but had he arranged to meet her? Had they planned to elope? Under pressure, Griscom revealed troubling details about Dorothy's state of mind. She had been despondent about her failed literary ambitions. Her family's control over her life had become suffocating. In her letters, she had made dark hints about an ending she might write for herself. The suicide theory gained traction. Central Park's reservoir seemed a likely place for someone to end their troubles permanently. But extensive searches found nothing. No body was ever discovered in Manhattan's waterways. Then came the false leads. Sightings bloomed like desert flowers after rain. Beautiful, brief, and ultimately false. Philadelphia railway stations, San Antonio's dusty streets, every major city in America reported seeing the missing heiress. The Pinkerton detectives followed every lead, no matter how absurd. A woman matching Dorothy's description boarding a train in Chicago. A mysterious figure in a hotel in California. Each hope dashed against the rocks of mistaken identity. Ransom notes arrived like poison pen letters, demanding $5,000 for Dorothy's return. Each fraudulent demand, scrawled by opportunists seeking to profit from a family's desperation, only deepened the mystery they pretended to solve. Most bizarrely, Joseph LaRue, a convicted criminal, confessed to witnessing Dorothy's murder in Central Park. His lurid tale of seeing her strangled and her body disposed of captivated the press, until investigators proved his story was complete fabrication. As months turned to years, the investigation hit wall after wall. Every lead dead-ended. Every theory collapsed under scrutiny. The woman who had walked into Central Park on a December afternoon had seemingly vanished from the face of the earth. But perhaps most telling was what investigators found in Dorothy's room. Her evening clothes, her jewelry, her personal possessions, all untouched. If she had planned to disappear, wouldn't she have taken something with her? The mystery was becoming more impossible by the day.
In the absence of facts, theories multiplied like shadows at twilight. Each one seemed plausible until examined closely, then dissolved into uncertainty. Theory 1. Suicide. The most accepted explanation among those who knew Dorothy personally, her rejected manuscripts, her family's suffocating control, her forbidden romance, all pointed to a young woman at the breaking point. Griscom himself believed this theory, citing her letters where disappointment bled through the ink like a wound that wouldn't heal. But suicide raised uncomfortable questions. Where was the body? Central Park was searched extensively. The rivers were dragged. Nothing. Theory 2, elopement. Perhaps Dorothy had staged her own disappearance to escape her family's control. Some imagined her on a steamer bound for Europe, her tailored blue suit exchanged for a new identity. But this romantic notion dissolved under investigation. No woman matching her description had boarded any vessel. No suspicious ticket purchases were found. If Dorothy had eloped, she had done so without leaving a trace. Theory 3, murder. The darkest possibility was that Dorothy had met with foul play. Manhattan in 1910 was not immune to crime, even in its most fashionable districts. But who would have motive to harm the perfume heiress? No enemies were known. No threatening letters had been received. Random crime seemed unlikely, given her wealth and social position. Theory 4, family cover-up. The most sinister theory suggested the Arnolds themselves knew more than they admitted. Their 6 weeks of silence, their obvious discomfort during interviews, their refusal to discuss certain aspects of Dorothy's life. Had Dorothy died at home? Had they covered up a family scandal? The theory gained no evidence but refused to die, fed by the Arnolds' obvious secretiveness. Theory 5, white slavery. A popular fear of the era was that young women were being kidnapped and forced into prostitution. Dorothy's beauty and obvious wealth would have been a valuable target. But again, no evidence supported this theory. No demands for ransom, no witnesses to an abduction, no connections to known trafficking operations. As the years passed, each theory seemed both possible and impossible. The truth remained as elusive as Dorothy herself, hidden somewhere in the maze of Manhattan's secrets. What had happened to Dorothy Arnold? The answer seemed to dance just beyond reach, taunting investigators and family alike with its persistent absence. Time moves forward with relentless precision, but some mysteries refuse to fade into history's shadows. Francis Arnold went to his grave in 1922, taking with him whatever secrets he might have held about those crucial 6 weeks of silence. On his deathbed, he reportedly told his wife he believed Dorothy had taken her own life, but offered no evidence for this conviction. Mary Martha Arnold followed in 1928, her final years marked by a daily ritual of watching her front door, waiting for a return that never came. Servants would later say she kept Dorothy's room exactly as it was the day she vanished, down to the half-finished manuscript on her writing desk. George Griscom Jr. lived until 1957, never marrying, carrying his guilt about Dorothy's disappearance like a stone in his chest. In interviews late in life, he remained convinced she had taken her own life, driven to despair by her family's control and her own thwarted ambitions. But conviction is not proof, and the mystery deepened rather than resolved with time. Today, Dorothy Arnold's disappearance remains officially unsolved. The NYPD case file, yellowed with age, still sits in their cold case archives. Amateur detectives and true crime enthusiasts continue to pore over the evidence, searching for clues that professional investigators missed. Modern theories have emerged. Some suggest Dorothy assumed a new identity and lived out her days in obscurity. Others believe she died by accident and her body was never found. DNA technology could potentially solve the case if remains were discovered. But after more than a century, that seems increasingly unlikely. The house at 108 East 79th Street still stands, though it's been converted to apartments. Tourists and mystery buffs occasionally pause outside, wondering if its walls hold secrets about America's most famous missing person. Perhaps the most haunting aspect of Dorothy's story isn't her disappearance. It's what it reveals about the gilded cage of Gilded Age womanhood. Here was a brilliant, beautiful, wealthy young woman who seemingly had everything, yet felt so trapped by expectation and tradition that she may have chosen death over the life mapped out for her. Or perhaps she found the courage to walk away from it all and reinventing herself somewhere beyond her family's reach. We may never know which version of her story is true. What we do know is that on December 12, 1910, Dorothy Arnold stepped out of her world and into legend, leaving behind one of America's most enduring mysteries.
The case of Dorothy Arnold reminds us that even in an age of incredible wealth and social privilege, some puzzles remain forever unsolved. Her story continues to fascinate because it embodies every fear and hope of the human condition. The desire for freedom, the weight of expectation, and the mystery of what happens when someone simply vanishes. Every December 12th, true crime enthusiasts remember the anniversary of her disappearance. Online forums buzz with new theories. Books continue to be written about the case. Dorothy Arnold, in her absence, has achieved the immortality that her literary ambitions never could have provided. Was she murdered? Did she commit suicide? Did she escape to live another life? The answer lies somewhere in the shadows of history, as elusive now as it was over a century ago. What we can say with certainty is that Dorothy Arnold's disappearance stands as one of America's greatest unsolved mysteries, a puzzle wrapped in the silk and secrets of the Gilded Age. If you enjoyed diving into this Gilded Age mystery, make sure to subscribe to Golden Age Mysteries for more untold stories from America's most fascinating era. What do you think happened to Dorothy Arnold? Let me know in the comments below. And remember, in the Golden Age, not all that glittered was gold, and not all mysteries were meant to be solved.